Senator. Senator Jackson.
Good morning.
Good morning. Today is Friday, February the 16th, 2024. I'm Delegate Edith Patterson, Chair of the Southern Maryland Delegation. We'd like to welcome you here today. We have special guests, but before we do that, I'm going to ask Delegate Todd Morgan if he would lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd be glad to. Got my flag here and everything. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Delegate Morgan. Do we have Delegate Long on? Okay, if not
yet.
Not yet. In our session, we begin with prayer. So if you bow your heads for a moment, please. Heavenly Father, as we gather here today, we thank thee for the many blessings you've afforded us. Most of all, we ask that you will give us guidance. Let us have listening ears and collaborative relationships as we work together, thy name and for the people of Maryland. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. I am really honored to and appreciative for the state's attorneys for the three counties to join us today. And we will just go in order. We just want to have you share with us information that you feel is pertinent for the citizens of Southern Maryland, really for Maryland. Any challenges, any trends that you note. And again, this is a discussion, and I believe a first in terms of our meetings in Southern Maryland. So we will begin with the Honorable Robert Harvey of Calvert County, followed by the Honorable Anthony Tony Covington of Charles County, and we'll end with the Honorable Jamie Sterling, St. Mary's County. Welcome, State Attorney.
Welcome.
Okay.
Whoops. My computer.
Great.
I'm honored to have been invited to this session. It's a unique experience for me. It hasn't happened in my 5 years in office.
I'm sorry, you're getting unmuted.
There we go.
Okay, great.
Okay. Well, I wanted to discuss a couple of legislative priorities. Obviously, the main focus this session for the state's attorneys across the state has been the package of juvenile justice reforms. That's Senate Bill 744 and House Bill 814. I personally support that package. The Maryland State's Attorneys Association supports that package. Our legislative committee, headed by John McCarthy, the state's attorney from Montgomery County, has worked very closely with Chairman Smith to fashion a workable bill, one that I think strikes a good balance between holding juveniles accountable for their actions, but at the same time maintaining the focus of the juvenile justice system, which is on rehabilitation. So I hope that we can all get behind and support those pieces of legislation, because we have seen across the state, not so much really in Calvert County, but we have seen across the state a rise in juvenile crime and the more serious kinds of crime. So that's a priority. Something a little bit more controversial, but I will mention it, is what I call a couple of truth in sentencing laws. House Bill 301, which prohibits incarcerated individuals who are serving sentences for first-degree rape or first-degree sex offense from receiving any diminution credits or good time credits off of their sentence. There's also the Safe Communities Act, which is Senate Bill 44 and House Bill 310, which prohibits persons convicted of first-degree and second-degree murder from receiving diminution credits. Now, I recognize these are controversial bills, and I recognize that diminution credits do play a role in keeping inmates and incarcerated individuals on track. But perhaps there's some room for compromise, striking a balance where individuals serving these kinds of sentences could be eligible for limited diminution credits.
So there's several matters on the agenda. I think the only report we.
I also want to thank the Calvert County delegation for putting forward House Bill 766, which is a prohibition on panhandling, roadside solicitation of panhandling. I can't tell you how many times I get calls from citizens asking me to do something about the panhandling in Calvert County, where individuals stand in the median in busy intersections and solicit funds from cars. And as the law currently exists, I have to tell them there's nothing I can do. This bill's House Bill 766 is modeled after existing laws that are already in effect, and I think 4 counties, including Charles County. Doesn't stop legitimate charitable or civic associations from soliciting funds, but it would prohibit people from standing in the roadway, endangering themselves and others, and soliciting money. The final priority, I think, for all state's attorneys across the state, but I'll speak for myself, has to do with illegal guns, illegal gun possession. We've had 3 examples in Calvert in just the past couple of days. Some fellow riding around in a car with a handgun that's somehow made fully automatic. Essentially, he's carrying a machine gun. The laws, of course, already prohibit that, so he's going to be charged with that. But we've also seen a couple of other things that are a little bit more interesting. We had a fellow who left the home to pick up his girlfriend at the Panera Bread, leaving a 4-year-old in the house with 4 loaded pistols accessible. We also had a situation where a fellow left a loaded handgun in the glove box of his pickup truck with his 2-year-old son in the front seat. And the son picked up the gun and shot himself. So I guess what I'm trying to say is anything that you can do to stop the illegal possession of handguns or firearms and to strengthen the safety measures surrounding the possession of those guns would be appreciated. Any tools that you can give us, we will use. We already put all of our illegal handgun possessions, I shouldn't say all, there's always exceptions to the rule, but the handgun possession cases we prosecute in the circuit court because we're more likely to get convictions and stiffer sentences. So that's my priorities. We had, unfortunately, a homicide last night in Calvert County, our first of the year. So I've been up most of the night, and I'm going to have to jump off about 9:30, but I thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your being with us. I think what we'll do, well, since you have to leave, are there questions for Sheriff Harvey at this time?
Hi, Mike.
Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, Senator Jackson.
Yes, ma'am. Good
Good
morning. Can you
Good
not see
morning.
my hand?
Yes, I do.
All right, got you. Good morning. Always great to see you, Mr. State's Attorney. Thank you for your presentation. And
Thank you.
We are working diligently up here. Give me a call if you need anything.
I've been up there a couple of times. I was up there till about 6 o'clock last night with the House Judiciary.
So you had an early night. You had an early night. You got off easy.
I know. I know you were working hard. I know it. You're working way too hard, in fact. Thank you very much.
Yeah, all right. Great to see you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I don't believe there are other hands, but let me ask you this, Sheriff, District Attorney Harvey, when you are testifying, is there a relationship with the committee or representatives from Southern Maryland regarding your testimony, whether in favor or opposition?
Well, I haven't been in front of any committees that have representatives from Southern Maryland, to my knowledge. I could be wrong, but primarily I'm appearing before the Senate Judicial Proceedings or the House Judiciary. Yesterday, it was about a piece of animal control legislation introduced by Delegate Embry and also Senator West on the Senate side.
Okay.
I pretty much limit, there are state's attorneys who are up there every day. I try not to do that. I think you know why.
Really, I don't. I'm on Ways and Means, so I really don't. But I think that of as a result of this morning's meeting, I hope that we can have a better relationship in terms of communicating ideas or ideologies in terms of making all three counties safer, but also very equitable in terms of how people are treated. So let me also point out that Julie Walton, who's with the Mediation Center with the College of Southern Maryland, is here also. And at the end, Julie will be asked, I'll ask her some questions about how mediation plays a role in both all the three counties and the state's attorney's offices. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. State's Attorney Harvey, we appreciate you, and we hope that you'll stay on until we you have to exit. The next online is State's Attorney Tony Covington. Good morning.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Good, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody's time, but I will be brief. I try to be respectful of everybody's time. Starting out, I kind of want to echo a little bit what Bob had to say about the meeting at all. You know, I've been doing this now. I'm in my fourth term, and I've been voicing the need for this for quite a while, and I'm so happy and so glad that Dr. Patterson made this happen and bring everybody together to talk about legislation. I think it's a great thing. I think it needs to be teamwork as far as trying to protect the public, and this is part of that. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate being invited to talk about it. Resources. I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of all the bills and all that. You guys know what they are. I know what they are. So I'm just going to speak kind of generally on a couple of topics that I think are important. Resources. When we're talking about criminal justice and criminal justice reform here in Maryland, we are wasting our breath and time unless we are talking about, one, putting resources into it, especially into juvenile services, especially into returning citizens. Okay, we do a great job here in Maryland and across the United States locking people up. We don't do a good job in preventing them from committing crimes in the first place. And we do even a worse job, I think, in returning citizens, helping folks get whatever. And if we're really serious about criminal justice reform and keeping our streets safe, we got to talk about jobs. You got to talk about training folks to do something other than what got them into prison. You know, burglars, they're burglars. If they don't have anything else to do to make money, they're going to keep on being burglars. Just that simple. Drug dealers. We got 70-year-old drug dealers roaming around here. Okay, because that's what they have done their entire life. That's how they've made their money, and that's all that they know. Right. So when we're talking about criminal justice, we're talking about reforms, we've got to talk about jobs connected to these things, training, vocational training, college, I don't care, whatever it is, anything to give people something different to do than what got them there in the first place. So I encourage everybody to look for ways to do that. You know, you guys control the money, and I know it ain't easy. I don't envy your job. There's only so much money. We're not the federal government where, you know, we get to print as much money as we want and just keep on going. So I get it, but it's about resources. That's what it's all about from my perspective and getting these things done. Juvenile justice. I do support the bill that's out that Mr. Harvey talked about. I would say with juvenile services, even more than anything, it's resources. I'm sure Julie Walton would agree with me on that. It's resources to do the different things, whether it's mediation, whether it's counseling, whatever it is, it's necessary. I do think that the pendulum has swung a little bit too far within juvenile justice. We have this from my observation. Laws have been passed here that have made it more difficult to, we use the word hold accountable, but I really, in juvenile court, I really think about getting the person the help that they need. When a juvenile commits a criminal act, he's raising his hand saying, hey, I got some issues over here. And our job is to help that person and that family, if we can, so that they are not going to be committing crimes as they grow into adulthood. If we can't hold them accountable because we're making it more difficult I'm talking specifically about interrogation type stuff, okay? We can't end up helping them because nobody's going to be held accountable. And more than that, there's no truth. Justice, there's no justice without truth. And if you can't find out what's happened and what's going on, then you're never going to have the truth and you're never going to have justice. And those folks who need the assistance, we transplant our thinking with adult court on top of juvenile court all too often. Juvenile court is not about punishing people, okay? Which we can pretend that our adult system has been rehabilitated for decades, and it hasn't. It's been about punishing people for their behavior, holding them accountable, and that's perfectly fine. But we also believe in juvenile court that they're kids, they're youngsters, they're juveniles, and they need to be given the opportunity to reform very, very early. And Frederick Douglass said it's much easier to build good men than to fix broken ones, right? So that's what we need to do on the juvenile side. But again, it's all about resources on that. So I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Somebody else probably does. But over the past 10 years, we shut down a whole bunch of juvenile programs that were necessary, and we need to get those back and more. So that's one priority, I think. Also on the drunk driving thing, I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm sure that Ms. Sterling is. She's been pushing for something I've been pushing for, like I said, the terms that I've been on here, and that is an increase in the penalty for motor vehicle manslaughter. Y'all have you may have an idea, but it is a slap in the face to victims' families. A 10-year thing. They come in and talk to them about their 18-year-old daughter who's driving off to college and gets hit at 100 miles per hour by some guy who's drunk, is killed, never going to go to college, never going to do all the things that a young person is going into adulthood is going to do. And you tell them, what can happen as far as the person that took their loved one from them. It ain't easy for them to hear it. It ain't easy for us to tell them either, but we have to. So I think there's something that can change on that. Likewise, I don't know if the Noah's bill has been put in or is out there. I know folks are talking about it, and that is trying to get rid of this huge loophole that people use to not have to use the interlock system when they get convicted of DUI, and that is if you get a probation before judgment, PBJ. Probably about half the people that should have, because they got convicted of a drunk driving offense, don't have to get an interlock system because they get probation before judgment. I mean, that's the standard. And has been as long as I've been, since 1991 when I started prosecuting. And when I was out in private practice, it's PBJ, don't worry about it. Go ahead about your business. So that's something that needs to change, because you got people we're not protecting folks from 50% of the people who have proven they're not responsible enough to not drink and drive, at least in that instance. And then if the ultimate does happen, we're not giving or not able to give. All right. Because I think more judges aren't able to give behavioral changing sentences. That's what I like to call them, something that's going to have the impact on a person and going to deter people to begin with. So that's what we need. So those are really the two priorities that I talk about, that I want to just bring to your attention. And again, resources and jobs programs, vocational programs. That's what we need to keep people off the street once they come back out. That's what we need. So we can make that happen. Be a great day. So I appreciate it. Now I'm here willing to take any questions. See, Senator Ellis came on my screen like I loaded for bear to come at me. So.
All right. Well, I see the hands. Senator Jackson was first, but first of all, thank you very much for the priorities. And they're a little bit different. And I appreciate the fact that you've dittoed or me too with the first part, but also added something else for consideration. And all three, if you have model programs, I don't believe in reinventing the wheel, but if you have model programs that you think would benefit Southern Maryland or your district, please let us know. Let's start with Senator Jackson, then Senator Ellis, and then Delegate Long, in that order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, State's Attorney Covington. I think I have the pleasure of having two of the three state's attorneys as my constituents. That's a great thing. And for the state's attorney in St. Mary's County, we're connected as well. But I will say this: look, our system, as you mentioned, has not been a rehabilitative system, particularly on the adult side, for far too long. We've taken out opportunities to get folks trained up so when they come out, they have jobs. So we are actually on my committee. I'm on budget and taxation, but I'm also on public safety. We have tasked Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services with coming up with a program that's primarily been spearheaded by Senator Rosepep, District 21, with the apprenticeship programs, and we've also tasked the school systems with going back to something we had quite a while ago in the school systems. Can't fathom why we ever took them out. Vocational programs across the board, and then the enhancement of CTEs. So we are working in that regard. We brought back well over $100 million and roughly $100 million in apprenticeship dollars to bring back to the communities. We're continuing to enhance those, continue to work on those, and there are a number of reentry programs that we're working on. From a resources standpoint, the wraparound services. We have a lot to do to refine those. We've talked about those, but we haven't really put those in place. We are in conversations to make sure, if you recall, the state's attorneys participated in the Juvenile Justice Reform Council. And I think that was probably one of the best task force or work groups that I sat on. And we just need to meet the marks that we brought forth. It had every stakeholder necessary a part of that. The one thing we missed for all three state's attorneys was our educational component for our youth, for our young folks. We do have the opportunity to, we're working on correcting that. There's a juvenile services education appointment that Superintendent Council was just placed on. So we're trying to get the education system in place there. So look, I echo what you say, Mr. State's Attorney, with both of you all. But I will say that, we have to get back to the rehabilitative commitment for juveniles and for our adults. Otherwise, come from the public safety world. Otherwise, we're just, we're on a hamster wheel. So thank you for being here today. And thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me for a few comments. So stay in touch.
Will do.
Senator Ellis, followed by Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your innovative leadership in bringing State's Attorney in Southern Maryland together to speak with us for the first time. I just say thank you, State's Attorney Covington and all the other State's Attorneys for being here. When I first was elected, I worked with the county commissioner president to have a process early on where we hear suggestions from
individuals, institutions in the county on bills. And I want to say, Mr. Covington, you have great experience and knowledge and ideas. And I just want to kind of encourage you to kind of work with us in that process. With some of your come before us, and let's hash some of these ideas out into bills during that process that we started generally, I think, in like September, and just work together to kind of get your experience and ideas, what you see on the ground, to really get into bill form so we can get those into law. And also want to just kind of say that you're just right about our investment in especially the juvenile space. Just in Charles County alone, we're working hard to reopen that pool at La Plata. That's where our swim teams went to practice, and they have no place to go now. And so we have more idle youth, and it's just ridiculous. We need to work on activities for them. I know we've worked hard and brought in the Boys and Girls Club in Indian Head, and Senator Jackson, myself, and delegates working to bring other Boys and Girls Club into Charles County, and you'll see more action there. But the question is, do you think those institutions, if we bring them in, will really help in the juvenile justice space as far as preventing them from joining the system? Do you think the Boys and Girls Club, kids active, doing things, and the community supporting that positive activity, do you think that will kind of maybe put your juvenile justice prosecutors out of business?
I don't know if it's going to put us out of business, but it certainly will help. Look, we all know that, what is it, idle hands, playground of the devil, whatever it is. Kids don't have anything to do. Youngsters don't have anything to do. They're going to mess up. So, that's just everybody, whether they're going to turn out to be career criminals or, just make one stupid mistake along the way. So yes, I absolutely think those will work. I have said for quite a while that the Maryland National Planning Park, or whatever it is, their whole rec center issue. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but I used to live in Prince George's County at one point, and they have all these little, right over by the courthouse. As a matter of fact, they got a little rec center where the kids can go anytime, whatever it is. And that's between Prince George's and Montgomery County. It's both. That is something that Madam Delegate said. If you got some models that we can look to, well, that's one of them. I don't know, where the resources on that come from. I don't know if that's a local thing. I don't know if it's a partnership between local and state, but that would be a great model in line with what you're talking about, Sandrella. So yes, I think it would help. Not going to put us out of business, because some people are just going to be criminals no matter what. Okay, but it will certainly help in my view.
Okay, and how about my point about working with us with the bills and that process we set up to vet them and to kind of get them filed? Some of the great ideas you talked about. We'd be able to.
We can certainly do that. I've over the more than a decade, I've been the one who's supposed to do this stuff in my office. I've reached out every now and then, so it's a different. So I'm more than happy and more than willing to participate in that. So yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate it, and thank you, ma'am.
Delegate Long, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, State Attorney Covington, for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
I want to go back to one of the points you made on the juvenile justice bill and the reform. I know the Black Caucus especially is working just to put together a more comprehensive bill and make sure we have the adequate resources to redirect youth. So I'm just wondering, do you feel that if there are boundaries around juvenile interrogation that prevents you from carrying out your duties, are there exigency exclusions as well? Just curious.
Well, I don't know of any exigencies with the law that was passed a couple of years ago regarding interrogation. You can't talk to a kid who's involved in these things unless they have an attorney, a parent present, and all that. It's funny because when that was first proposed, I believe the sheriff here in Charles County put some statistics together and showed that juvenile respondents or suspects, they invoked their Miranda rights and didn't talk to the police at a much higher rate than adults were. So I guess that just went to show at that time that the thought that the police are running roughshod over youngsters and all that good stuff is not necessarily true. Look, that's a very difficult thing. I know that every parent, and I'm a parent, my kids are grown now, thank the Lord, and we got through without any juvenile justice involvement. But every parent is going to have a huge problem, and I get it, with somebody speaking to their child without them at least knowing about it. Okay. My concern is, and anyone who's practiced law knows this, and lay people know it as well, that, you know, attorneys, parents, they don't want anybody to say anything. Parents are more willing, quite frankly, though, than one would think, to have their child tell the police what happened and what the truth is. And that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. You know, criminal justice, over as long as I've been doing this thing, it's kind of, folks have gotten to think, well, you know, the police they just got to luck out. They got to luck up to get the information to charge somebody. It's not what it used to be, at least in my mind, perhaps not in reality, the search for truth. You know, supposedly we're coming to our courtrooms seeking justice, and everybody talks about, you know, we have an adversarial system, and in the crucible of these two sides fighting it out, the truth is going to emerge. Well, that doesn't happen because we have all these different rules about evidence and what comes in and what doesn't come in. So, and it's the same thing on this. If you really are searching for truth, folks ought to be able to talk to kids. That's all. That's all that I'm saying. And it does make things more difficult to prove the case. If you don't know what happened because the one or two kids that are there don't say anything, then what are you going to do? You just can't figure it out. I get it, though. I get the attitude. I'm just telling you reality, what it is. That yeah, it has an adverse impact on the ability of the state to hold whoever's responsible for whatever happened accountable, whether it's that kid or some other kid or some adult.
Okay. Thank you for your response. I would encourage you to take a different look just one more time. I do believe that there are some circumstances in there for emergency situations, but I do appreciate you being here and all the other state's attorneys. Thank you.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Delegate Long. And I hope that we will have a chance to have Ms. Walton offer some suggestions in terms of mediation. Juvenile justice, or the juvenile issue, is multifaceted. And my hope is that we can come up with some solutions. And I like the fact that Attorney Covenant offered some alternatives or suggestions, but the reality of it is we all must be flexible and really sit down and figure out how we can make sure that the young people, those who are affected by the laws, are given opportunities once. I'll just leave it at opportunities. Okay, the last one is State's Attorney Jamie Sterling. Good morning. And after you've finished with your presentation, I'll have a quick session, a chance for Ms. Walton to offer comments, and then we'll open it up. Okay.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So first, thank you, Madam Chairperson and members of the Southern Maryland delegation. After hearing from State's Attorney Covington and State's Attorney Harvey, I am delighted that this is something that the delegation is starting anew. I'm honored to be a part of it in somewhat of a inaugural year. I hope this is continued. I can tell you, as the 22nd State's Attorney in St. Mary's County, my predecessor was before me for 24 years. I am so lucky to have two amazing partners from Calvert and Charles County. State's Attorney Covington is a legend in his own right, a tremendous trial attorney, does things with such great vision. His advancements in technology are something to be admired and strive for. He has built a tremendous office. And likewise, State's Attorney Harvey is someone who I've looked up to when he was the Deputy State's Attorney of Prince George's County. I had the pleasure of working on the other side when he was the defense attorney and I was a state's attorney, and learning from him as well. and then working together. And he has been a tremendous asset. So I feel like I am in a wonderful position to be flanked by these two brilliant litigators and leaders in what they do. So I think Southern Maryland is in a great place. We have you all who have served very well, and we have such a diverse group in regions and in thought. And I think having diversity of thought and experiences helps us all to grow. I love being able to hear different sides of different ideas. And I think it's one of the things that my dad always says, it doesn't matter where the idea comes from, whether it's the left or the right. He wants to hear all of them because he wants to hear the best ideas and he wants them to rise to the top. And that's the only way that we can figure out what the best idea is. So I really appreciate this opportunity. Now, diving in, I don't want to echo too much about what State's Attorney Covington and State's Attorney Harvey said, because we all are in agreement. Juvenile justice has to be at the forefront. The changes that have happened, I feel like I agree, the pendulum has swung completely the other way, and we need to start fixing it. But we can't let it swing completely back. So I think this is a good start with the legislations that have gone through. I am in full support of trying to fix some of these issues that have come up. I think there were some collateral consequences of some issues that have risen that maybe were not predicted, and we're starting to see them. So I like that we are having conversations and trying to think of ways to fix it. State's Attorney Covington is correct. My initiatives this year, something that I have been passionate about throughout my career, 15 years as a prosecutor, and I have been lucky to be able to be in Annapolis and understanding the legislative system and being a part of the Maryland State's Attorneys Association's legislative committee at a young time in my prosecutorial career, which kind of makes me more of the more experienced committee members for the State's Attorneys Association for legislation. I have been in Annapolis and testified, and I usually pick one major area of legislation that I want to fix or that I find a problem in because I want to bring it up to the legislator's attention. My opinion is to try to pick one issue and bring that up so that I'm not bringing 50 issues up. So there are a lot of things that we can change, but drunk driving, vehicular homicides, those are on the forefront. So I had a case in my jurisdiction, 18-year-old young man, his name is Jamari Duckett, and he was killed by a drunk driver. The maximum penalty in Maryland is a 10-year offense for vehicular homicide. And so we're not talking about like a speeding ticket. We're not talking about criminally negligent homicide. We're talking about gross negligent vehicular homicide. So it's the most highest form of vehicular homicide. And of course, we all agree that it's not first-degree murder. No one got behind a car, behind a wheel and say, hey, today I'm going to kill someone or I'm going to kill that person. That would be charged as first-degree murder. So in these cases where you have vehicular homicide, the maximum penalty is 10 years. But what's even more offensive, in my opinion, is it's considered a nonviolent crime. So to me, in our profession, unfortunately, we are inundated with photos of injuries, of attempted murders and OCME reports. That's part of our job. We have to see these pictures. We have to present this evidence. And when you see a gunshot wound or a knife stab, or even if it's multiple, I had cases in Anne Arundel County where it's multiple stab wounds. In comparison, it could, someone could be stabbed 40 or 50 times. In comparison to what a knife or a gunshot, if someone shot 4 or 5 times and they're killed, those injuries in comparison to a vehicle that hits a person, whether they are strapped in a seatbelt in their own car or they're a pedestrian, that body cannot sustain what a vehicle can do to the body. So the idea that that form of murder, that form of killing is considered nonviolent is unconscionable. It is not logical. And a lot of these families who have their loved ones killed for no wrongdoing of their own, they are stripped away of not only their loved one's life, children, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, but they're stripped away a lot of times of having an open casket funeral. I go on the scene. I think it's very important to collect the evidence on the scene. And these are people who are decapitated. They're burned in vehicles. And that kind of murder and suffering cannot be nonviolent. I think we need to stiffen the penalties. They need to be violent crimes. And I think it's up to the judges to decide. Each scenario is going to be different. Not every person is going to be, the result is going to be the same. And there's different defendants. And we have to get the tools to be able to negotiate these cases and to be able to bring some kind of justice to the families. The judges have to be able to balance the facts of every case. Not all of them are going to be as gruesome. But when you give a maximum penalty of 10 years and it's considered nonviolent, the sentencing guidelines for these are basically like 3 months to 4 years. It is considered, because it's considered nonviolent, the maximum that they'll serve is 25% of the time. So most of the people who get into these collisions, it's a first time offense, their sentencing guidelines are 3 months to 4 years. If they get, by some kind of miracle, all 10 years of incarceration, they will be out in 2.5 years. That is not justice. There's no rehabilitation that's possible, because once they serve their 2.5 years, they cannot be put on probation. We can't get them the services that they may need. And I think we just need more time to work with. So one of the pushes for Jamari's Law is us seeing, and I think, Mr. Covington, State's Attorney Covington, has been a champion of drunk driving cases for his whole career. And I think he understands as well. We can't continue to prosecute these cases where we have nothing left for the victims, for them to receive any kind of justice and to not have any rehabilitation. So our push is to maximize the penalties to 20 years, because if there is an instance that someone's going to get 20 years to spend all but 10 years, they're only going to serve 2.5 years, but at least we can put them on probation to get them the services that they need, and to, they're going to return back to society. No one's serving their entire life for these, but we have to be able to get victims some sense of justice. I'm going to leave you with one last story on this issue. There was a case in Anne Arundel County where it was a beautiful spring day. Mother was walking with her 2 boys, 12 years old and 10 years old. The 10-year-old was on a skateboard, so she was, on a sidewalk, and they were walking she was walking with her 10-year-old. The 12-year-old was giving his 10-year-old brother a little space so he could ride his skateboard. As they're walking in the middle of the day, a driver who was trying to smoke crack, he had just seen his friend overdose. He left the scene where his friend overdosed using the same substance. He gets in his work van and decides he's going to finish smoking his crack. So he starts lighting up his pipe, and he himself overdoses. The mother is able to push the 10-year-old out the way on the skateboard. He gets behind the bushes. The 12-year-old who was behind her, she could not save. The young man that overdosed ran over her 12-year-old. And because he had been slumped over the wheel, he had run over him again. The car came back. She watched her son die, 12-year-old child, and the guy is out. He did less than 2 years. This is not justice. We have to have the opportunities, and this is why I brought this. This is my #1 initiative this year. There has to be the opportunity for us to be able to recommend sentences and for judges to fashion them. And the only thing we can do this year is to plead with you to help us. We can do nothing less. And so this is my plea. Please help us this year. This is such an important law. It's Jamari's Law. Senator Bailey is the sponsor, Senate Bill 26. And I believe it's Delegate Crosby's. I'm looking up the House bill of it. It is House Bill 264. It just came out of the Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously. Please, if there's one thing that you do, this is the big, huge ask that we have for you, please, that I do for St. Mary's County. And I know Delegate Atterbury has an interlock, State's Attorney Covington's right, the interlock program. There's that huge loophole with if you have a probation for a judgment. I will be there on Wednesday to testify on that. And State's Attorney Covington, the numbers are actually even more alarming. In 2021, it was 2,700 people who did not receive a PBJ, but over 5,000, close to 6,000 people did receive a PBJ. So out of the 8,332 convictions for drunk driving, over 5,000 of them will not have interlock, and that's with the conviction. So it's even doubly worse. But thank you very much for the opportunity. You are all welcome to call me anytime. I would love to partner up on any initiatives. It's truly an honor to serve with you, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I have one question about the proposal. Does it include rehabilitation? Because you cited while they're incarcerated, they should have rehabilitation services offered.
So in each of the detention centers or division of corrections, there's rehabilitative classes or courses, or if you're in the Patuxent Institute or an 8505 or 8507 Health General article, you will get it. But the point that cannot go understated is if you serve your full sentence, even though you're serving 2.5 years, you've served the full sentence. 2.5 years is a 10-year sentence. So without having anything over your head, meaning to suspend down, to be on probation, you don't get any rehabilitation afterwards. There is no probation, and you don't get put on supervised probation with any of those treatments. So if you want to give rehabilitative services, for example, in the young man's case, the 12-year-old who was killed, that sentence was 10 years, suspend all but 8 years. So they did not give him the maximum penalty for that case because the judge wanted to give him rehabilitative services. So I think when you do that, you're really, you're limiting the punishment aspect where there should be some punishment. And when it comes down to it, I agree, rehabilitation is important. But in these cases, the punishment aspect will never fit an appropriate punishment if they're getting a year to serve on that sentence. But worse, they're even getting home detention. Even in the division of corrections, it's just a slap in the face. Your child's murdered, and that's what you get to see. So
thank you very much. We have 2 questions, Senator Jackson, followed by Delegate Morgan. Good morning.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, and State's Attorney Sterling, great presentation. Thank you very much. I know the sheriffs and chiefs are supportive of that piece of legislation as well. And I look forward to those punishments, meeting the crime. I'll also say that with Noah's Law, having to have been around when we tried to craft that law years ago, and for some reason, somewhere along the way, it would never get to what we originally intended it to be. But we haven't given up on that, and that's for you and the other 2 state attorneys, Covington, and in particular, he brought that up. I think as we continue to move through this since 2016, as all 3 of you know, justice reinvestment, was taken upon across the country and here in Maryland. And as we're trying to ratchet things up, we have to be very careful not to swing the pendulum. I think all 3 of you mentioned that this morning. Coming from the law enforcement community, I've always mentioned reform is necessary in every environment that we operate in, but we have to make sure that it's sustainable, well thought out, has all the stakeholders at the table, and or else we come back and try to right these challenges. And the last thing I'll say is this, Madam Chair, the public safety arena, or the arena that we're talking about this morning, it is too costly for us to not to have all the true stakeholders at the table, and for us to come up with a consensus versus an imbalance in what we're doing forward. That's part of my little editorial, but here we are again, trying to write something that if we take our time and have well thought out processes in place, we can get some things done. So great seeing you this morning, and we have a dynamic team in Southern Maryland, so glad to be a part of it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Delegate Morgan.
All right, got the mute off now. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, hey, thank you all for coming and presenting. And look, the crime is like a huge topic in our state right now, especially in the Southern Maryland area. So I appreciate you taking the time. I got a couple comments, and I wanted to ask you a question about the latest Gonzalez polls. First on the comments, Jamie, do you think there's a problem with the Dem credits? And as far as like maybe a bigger bill with some truth and sentencing guidelines, because I know we're trying to raise the vehicular manslaughter charge up to 20 years, but I think it's ludicrous that someone gets a 10-year sentence and they serve 2.5. So if they have the ability to sentence to 20, I guess they're going to serve 5. Is that how that works?
If they get sentenced to full 20, they would serve 5. That is how it works for a non-violent crime. Now, there are 2 pieces of legislation that are before the House and the Senate, which could change that. It would be a max of 20, and there's another separate piece of legislation. I believe it's Senator Carrozza's bill, and that's to turn vehicular homicide to a violent crime, which would have them serve half and not 25%.
So thank you for that information, and look, I'm supportive of that. I heard a lot of comments this morning about the pendulum swinging, and in my opinion, the pendulum have swung too much. We've had bills like justice reinvestment, juvenile crime reform, police reform, no cash bail bond, and it's created this chaotic system in our justice system where criminals, you can say we're locking them up, but we're not. There's less people in jail now than in any time in our lifetime. And I wanted to point y'all to the Gonzalez poll that just was released this week. I wanted to inform the state's attorneys this. I didn't know if you saw that, but there was 2 questions in there that kind of really told the story what the public is feeling right now. One is a mandatory 10-year prison sentence for those dealing fentanyl that leads to a death. So it was supported by the public at an overwhelmingly 83%, including those in the African American community at 80%. And then you scroll up a little bit from this poll, it talked about theft of a firearm, which we've always had this disagreement what theft of a firearm is versus possession of a firearm. And to me, theft of a firearm in Maryland should be made illegal, which it's not. States across the state, it's supported at 88%, including at 89% in the African American community. So I just was really looking for some comments. I didn't know if you all saw that poll, but to me, these questions kind of speaks to the entire public of Marylanders just really frustrated with the amount of crime that's out there and the lack of focus on victims.
So thank you, Delegate Morgan. I had not heard or seen the Gonzalez poll, but let me take some of the comments or questions that you have made kind of in turn. As to the DIM credits, the diminution credits and the truth in sentencing, they're 2 separate things that kind of result in perhaps like the release of someone. And I'll even if Mr. Covington wants to join in this answer, because I'm sure he has a great opinion too, but I'll take the first stab at it. But the diminution credits, those are given and they're calculated, and they're given and calculated in a way that it is impossible to figure out what the actual math is. And it's a sliding scale and it changes. They put out what the DIM credits will be, and then they can change it at any time, and the equations can change, and none of us really know. So when we end up talking to victims, we have a guess of 25% for nonviolent crimes and 50% for violent crimes. But as for the truth in sentencing, that's something totally different as well. One of the things that I wanted to push forward when with the previous administration, when my dad was governor, one of the things that we chatted about, and he would ask me questions like, well, if you get sentenced to 10 years, why aren't you doing 10 years? Like, why can't you just do the 10 years that you're sentenced to? And there's a lot of reasons for that. part of it is when people are incarcerated, and same thing for life, right? If you're sentenced to life, why are you getting out in 20 years? Some of that has to do with control in the prisons and trying to figure out, like, people have to have some sort of reward. If they're not going to be able to earn good credits or earn good time, then it's going to be even a tougher situation when you're in the prisons. And there's got to be some kind of valuation or opportunity for good behavior, so to speak. But the separate piece is really truth in sentencing. So one of the things that I wanted was, if we know what the dim credits could be, there's got to be some kind of app or equation for that. So what I had recommended was, when the judge gives the sentence, to say something like, sir or ma'am, you're being sentenced to 10 years. What that means is, in this particular instance, if you earn all your dim credits, you will be out in 2. If you have all the best behavior ever and you're the best inmate, you will be out in 2. Compared to, if you do not earn any of your dim credits and you serve full time and you don't get paroled, you'll be out in 6. So then when they announce the sentence, truth in sentencing, letting every single person know, including the victims, the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, and the defendant, I'm sentencing you to 10 years. And that means you will be serving 2 to 6.
Thank you very much. But we only have 10 o'clock. We have to close.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Delegate Davis has a question.
I have more of a comment. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that there's a whole different perspective. The Legislative Black Caucus has taken on a whole different perspective, and we start from the premise that the state of Maryland incarcerates more Black and brown people than any place else in the world. So we have to start with that premise. So when you talk about a pendulum, we need to swing back, unless you think that Black people commit more crimes than anybody else, which is not the fact, So I like numbers, but I'll speak briefly just about the pendulum. We can have a whole discussion about what is enough time for a crime, but give me the data that supports that the longer sentence makes our community safer. It doesn't. So there is no data. I'd love to continue the conversation. We don't have enough time, but I'm telling you, there's a whole nother perspective. Thank you.
Well, hopefully we can have that conversation.
Thank you very much. Okay, before we get cut off, I want to thank the presenters, the state's attorneys, my colleagues, and Ms. Walton, do you have just a few comments to make before we close out, please?
Yes, I'll have to make it short. So I just want you all to know that you have a community mediation center in each of your counties. And we are here to provide our alternatives to lower crimes that we can not have to go through the criminal justice system. Some things can be handled through mediation. Some things can be handled through dialogue, through community conferencing. We're doing a lot of community conferencing with the schools to change the directory of the kids. Most of it's fighting. We could be partnering with our state's attorney's office and creating alternatives for mediation and community conferencing for adults.
Ms. Walton, are you part of the state's attorney's office?
Well, I am.
Are you part of the state's attorney's office, please?
Not right now.
Okay.
We don't have any programs. We're partnering with the state's attorney's office right now. But Mr. Covington's hired someone to do alternative programs, and I intend to meet with her this year to start talking about what we can do. And we need to start looking at partnerships with community organizations.
All right, that's a viable solution. John Hartline, quickly, can you give an announcement regarding Southern Maryland Tri-County Community Action?
I want just to say that the legislative reception is scheduled for February 29th. We have already collected $22,000 in monies. That's actually more than we collected last year. We still have just less than 2 weeks to go.
Okay.
After the announcement went out, We have so far have 37 delegates and senators have signed up to attend.
So
So
that's our charge, to get more people involved. And we thank you again. It's February 29th at the Graduate Hotel.
yes,
Beginning. Okay, I think we're going to be zoomed out. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again March the 1st.